for being here on the Scrunch Influencer Marketing podcast. It's so lovely to have you. Now, you have been in influencer marketing for quite a while and have even been awarded for your contribution to the industry. So I would love, first up, if you could tell us a little bit about your career journey, how you got to being the influencer marketing manager at Bulletproof 360, and what that journey was like and how you got into influencer marketing.
That sounds great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today. And it was quite a journey, honestly, to get to Bulletproof, but I'll keep it to the condensed version. My total influencer marketing journey started at a company called Kodiak Cakes, and they actually are a pancake company, not a cake company, but definitely in the health food CPG space. And that's where I started about 7 years ago, actually, with kind of the idea to run an ambassador program. And that just completely turned into influencer marketing. At the time, it was a buzzword and everyone was throwing it around. PR agencies were saying they wanted to do influencer marketing for us. And since I was already running PR, it just kind of made sense to start doing influencer marketing in-house. So we really started with brand awareness, a lot of product gifting, a ton of influencer events back then, and just grew it into this amazing program. I love what I built at Kodiak Cakes. It was so much fun. And it really helped set me on a trend of staying in health foods and doing influencer marketing. So I went to Factor 75 next and was doing social media and influencer marketing there. And then they were acquired. So I actually moved to a beauty company called Mini Lux. And so briefly got to be out of the health food space and kind of work with beauty influencers, which was really fun and just a totally different group of people to be working with. And that's about the time I also started doing some freelance influencer marketing. So I was able to work with even more companies and building more programs, and eventually found my way to Bulletproof, where I've been for going on about 6 months now, which is really exciting.
Wow. And so what kind of influencer marketing do they do at Bulletproof? Is it always on, affiliate, campaigns? What's it look like at Bulletproof?
We have a lot going on. We actually switched from the time I started, which was basically all brand awareness, looking at earned media value, to now we're more on the growth and e-commerce team, and we solely focus on how we can drive ROI and revenue from our influencers. So really took a big pivot, 180 switch from brand awareness to now growth. And we run a lot of campaigns. We have evergreen campaigns running at all times. And then we have specific product launch campaigns because Bulletproof is constantly launching new products, which is super exciting. And so we get to run fun campaigns around that as well. And we do have some affiliate marketing, and we're hoping to kind of build that into our influencer program. And then we have a brand ambassador program that's outside of influencer as well. So we really try and hit on all the bases.
Yeah. And I love what you said there around switching from brand awareness to ROI, because I think that there's still a lot of debate in the industry as to whether influencers really do drive sales outcomes, which they do. But I wondered if you could touch a little bit on how the strategy changes. So how you actually interact with an influencer and what you get them to do when it goes from being a brand awareness strategy to an ROI or sales outcome.
Definitely. I think for us, it really changed from looking strictly at the numbers and looking at, how many impressions can they draw, more so looking at the macro influencer, to kind of getting nitty gritty and looking at the micro to mid-tier influencer, because the engagement rate for them is typically much higher. And it's almost more looking at the trustworthiness of that influencer. So we found that the smaller the influencer, typically more trustworthy. So they do generally lead to a higher click-through rate, more conversions, and also kind of looking at more long-term relationships in that as well. So where we were just trying to drive impressions, we were kind of able to do a ton of one-offs. And then when we're trying to do conversions and look at ROI, it pays better for us and for them to do a 3-month, 6-month partnership, so that the same audience is seeing the product over and over again. And we're just priming them to finally click the link and finally, buy the product, because this influencer has been going on about it for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's super interesting as well. Because people often ask, who should I work with? Should it be the micro, the macro, the power? But I think, you guys have really nailed figuring out who drives the most conversions for you. And I love that you talked about the trustworthiness scale. Is that something that you kind of look at every influencer like one-on-one and kind of figure that out? Or do you take more of a mass approach? Do you use analytics tools? Like, how do you actually get to having built such a successful program?
We look a lot at audience and metrics, first of all. So looking at, their engagement rate overall. Are people even interacting with their posts? That's, a dead giveaway right off the bat, whether we should work with somebody or not.
Yeah.
And then if the product will resonate, I think that that's a really important component. And a big pivot for us was looking at influencers where, coffee fits very naturally into their feed. It's not, the fitness person who has never talked about a thing that they eat or drink ever. It's the person who's occasionally like, I eat, these protein bars with collagen, or, I drink coffee on occasion. So really trying to figure out the people who can tie it in more seamlessly, so it makes sense to their audience. And then I think kind of looking at how many brands they're working with. So they're I almost think serial influencers, where they are just taking every single brand deal that's coming their way and just trying to make as much money off of it as possible, which kudos to them. But the audience gets very worn out very quickly, and it's just ad after ad. So in my mind, they're not very trustworthy, because as a consumer, I don't trust somebody who is saying they're in love with a different brand every single day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, it obviously sounds like that's a time-consuming process as well, but well worth the investment and really understanding, which is really interesting. I mean, I don't know how many years ago, but there never used to be an influencer role, right? It fit into PR or social media. And now, you search on LinkedIn for influencer marketing roles, and there's thousands of them and brands now. Like, that's how important it is. But also, I think a reflection on, how much effort you really do have to go to understand your brand, understand what strategies work to drive, whether it's brand awareness, conversions, depending on what your marketing strategy is. So yeah, that's super cool.
It's crazy how it's changed. It's almost like the social media manager role that no one thought every company would need, and then they did. And now influencer marketing is kind of doing the same thing. Because even when I had the job back at Kodiak Cakes and kind of made it up and was figuring it out as I went, I almost felt like I was pigeonholed, and I was worried about my career. Like, have I put myself in a corner? Am I ever going to have a job anywhere else? Like, is anyone ever going to want influencer marketing? And now 7 years later, like you said, there's thousands of jobs out there. Everyone wants influencer marketing. So it's great.
Yeah. And amazing that you've specialized, right? So like, now is the time for influencer marketing. And I think a lot of companies are looking for people that have experience in influencer marketing, which is kind of tough, because it hasn't been a role before. So it really does rely on people that might have gotten that experience in a social or PR kind of position. So it's early days still, which I always find super exciting.
It's been really exciting.
Yeah, awesome. And so, I mean, we could sit here and talk about how amazing influencer marketing is all day, but what do you think some of the key challenges are in the industry, whether it's something that you've experienced in your roles, or whether, something that you've experienced and seen or observed in the industry in general?
I think, okay, there are quite a few, but I can narrow it down. And I thought about this one quite a bit, because, it's a growing, changing field constantly. So like, we'll narrow it down to like 3 key issues that I saw. And I think one of the biggest things is there's no regulation for payments and what influencers should be paid, or what they should expect to be paid. And it's becoming, I think, more and more of an issue, just as more micro influencers expect to be paid, which, creating content does take time and effort, but I think no one has a basis for it. And it's becoming more and more of a problem. I think the smart influencers out there are, getting back to brands and saying, I want $500 for this post because I get this number of impressions and I get this number of engagement rate. And that is worth this much per impression or per engagement. And so the influencers that have that mindset behind their posts, not just, oh, well, my friend got paid $1,000, so I get paid $1,000,
Yeah.
is a much better approach to it, especially
Yes.
when you're talking to a ton of brands who are seeing proposals and talking to influencers all day.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with experience. I have a coordinator, and I think in trying to, teach her about receiving proposals, I, can't write down a list of like, this number of followers equals this price point that you should accept. You kind of just have to be in the business and looking at it day in and day out. And then you eventually start to learn the price points that make sense. And then the ones that are completely outlandish. And then occasionally the ones where you get a really good deal.
Yes.
So it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But that's one of the first, I think, big issues. And then, kind of tied in with that, you're working with a lot of people that are a little inexperienced, or they're doing it on the side. So this isn't their main job. So I think that there's always, communication, just people not understanding the deliverables, people not even understanding FTC guidelines. Like, you have to put #ad or sponsored. You have to indicate that, or everyone gets in trouble. And I think it's just, a lot of the age group that you're working with. And because it is such a new industry, people don't understand that, this is serious. And it's, marketing, and we have to do it. So I think that's definitely part of it as well. And I think finally, in the word influencer is starting to get kind of a bad rep. I kind of noticed the reputation of it changing over the years, where everyone's like, oh, it's just another influencer post. It's just another ad or whatever. So I think finding the right creators, and I kind of have shifted even my mindset to call that everyone content creators, because kind of sounds better to them. It kind of sounds better in the industry. And it also kind of helps the fact that they're creating content. They're not just creating ads. And then hopefully it would look more natural in their feed, or the way that they're showing the product to their audience, that, they're creating content with it because they like it, not they just got paid a bunch of money to create this ad. And I think that it's becoming very obvious.
Yeah. And it's really nice too, because I think one of the benefits of influencer marketing is the content. Like, I think when some brands think about, okay, how much budget am I going to set aside for influencer marketing? Sometimes they do just compare it to an advertising channel, and absolutely it does need to stack up, but there's so much more that influencer marketing delivers. We see some brands who even just use influencers as their content strategy. So they don't even care about the advertising side. They just go, you know what, we aren't that great at creating content, so let's enlist a bunch of amazing content creators to do it. And then the reach and the advertising side is actually the bonus for them. So I think sometimes, we kind of need to think about all parts of the equation that influencers or creators are bringing to the table, if we're really thinking about it holistically in the marketing strategy.
Completely agree with that.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, like, so you mentioned having to educate the influencers is a key part of the role, figuring out budgets is a key part of the role. And then, thinking about them as content creators as kind of some of the challenges that are coming up. What do you think forward looking in terms of trends? Do you think that we're going to have solved any of those problems in the near future? Or do you think that people are looking at, who cares? We're not going to be able to change the industry. Let's just like go with it and do other things. What do you think the future holds?
I think we're going to keep running into these issues, because honestly, where the industry is going seems to be going more in the way of the micro influencer, or even the nano influencer, the, really everyday person, and really trying to utilize the word of mouth marketing approach, which I think is fantastic. It's like, how can we capitalize on word of mouth marketing on social media? And it's typically with nano or micro influencers. But those problems still arise, because now you're working with even smaller people who truly probably don't even consider themselves an influencer. They could have 2,000, 5,000 followers, and, maybe they got them in college. Maybe it's just a lot of friends and family or their community, which is great for the marketer and the brand that's approaching them. But I think that we're going to keep running into those problems as we continue to niche down and like convince the everyday person that you are an influencer, so you can get paid or get free things in order to post, which, it's an amazing thing that marketing is kind of changing digitally so much. But I do think we're going to keep running into these issues, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's well, I mean, it's interesting, right? It's not like you go to uni or university or college to become an influencer. It's kind of a profession that exists that everyone's just kind of learning as they go, and there are platforms, there's lots of blog articles out there on how to be an influencer, but there isn't like a global standard that exists in terms of, I've done that course, so I know how to invoice people, I know how to read a contract, I know what deliverables are in a brief, all of that kind of stuff. So I think maybe we just invented something new here. Maybe that needs to exist.
Thinking we should go make a course on it. Like, here's a course, how to be an influencer. It's that, or everyone is going to get an agent or a manager, and we're going to be dealing with so many agents and managers.
Yes.
I mean, I already deal with them so much even on the super micro side. It'll be crazy to me every once in a while. Someone will reach out and say, oh no, you can talk about content to my manager. I'm like, oh, you have 5,000 followers and you have a manager. Okay. Surprise, but I guess this is the way of the world.
Totally, but it's so interesting. So I'd love to get your opinion on manager versus no manager. Do you run into any issues, between the two?
Personally, I hate when influencers have a manager, and I understand why they need them. And yes, they're great for reading contracts, but I do think managers tend to misrepresent the influencer. Like, if an influencer is really excited about a brand and they'll tell me that, then they'll introduce me to the manager, and the manager might be there to play hardball a little bit. But I'm like, you are literally about to lose out on this brand deal because your manager is kind of either not paying enough attention to what they're emailing me about, because they don't. Yeah. They'll ask a bunch of times, well, what are the deliverables? What was the price? And I'm like, this is literally your job to be understanding this and, bringing it back.
Yeah.
Or, they'll be confused about content. If we ask, if we're going to do this long-term contract, what are your ideas for content? And as the content creator, you'd think it would be their job to bring it back. And the manager will be like, well, no, let's get on a call and brainstorm. And I'm like, no, that's not, we're paying you to do that. So I honestly think a lot of the times, and maybe this is a learning curve for the managers, because the influencers are new to this role and these jobs, and the managers are new too. But I do think that there's some learning that has to happen, because, the manager can make or break it for these influencers. And I do take a lot of thought into working with an influencer, again, based on that relationship. And I think I can't form a relationship unless I'm talking to that person. If I'm always talking to the manager, and occasionally you get a really great manager that you enjoy working with, but I would say like 9 times out of 10, they were probably very difficult to work with. And we're redlining things in the contract that no one else has ever redlined, just because they're, have to, because of their agency, not necessarily because of that influencer. So overall, I would say my experience isn't great, and I don't love working with them, but I do understand why some people need managers.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too. I think the biggest issue I have comes back to pricing. So one thing we've noticed running campaigns is, yes, every influencer charges something completely different, and you've kind of got to create your own benchmarks. But, where a manager got involved, we're then seeing markup on markup on markup. So influencers who might have been in budget for a brand who now have a manager who's charging, sometimes only 15%, but we've seen up to 30%. And then if you're using an agency, they're taking a clip. So this kind of influencer starts to miss out on deals, because by the time it gets back to the brand, it's double the price. So I think unfortunately, there's pros and cons, in terms of, I agree with you, sometimes super helpful. And if the influencer, is doing it as like a side hustle and they have a full-time job, then the manager kind of gets back to you a little bit more quickly. So that can help. But there's sort of pros and cons, I think, to the whole thing.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially with the pricing. And I think a lot of maybe influencers don't realize that these days there are so many resources for brands to find almost lookalike profiles. So if it's between two people who have the same audience, about the same follower size, creating the same content, like, there is no difference. And this person has an agent and they're going to charge a 20% agency fee and this influencer isn't, I'm always going to go with the other influencer.
Yeah.
And I think that, maybe people aren't realizing like they're losing out on pretty good deals just because of these, like you said, 10 to 30+% agency fees. It gets kind of insane.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, amazing. So then tell me, we've made the industry out to be super amazing, can, yield so many awesome results, but has a whole raft of challenges. If you could give some advice to brands who are just starting out in this space, so they're, maybe they're a lifestyle brand and they know that influencer marketing would actually work well for them, but they're kind of feeling a little bit apprehensive in terms of where to start. Do you have any tips or advice on how to get going creating an influencer program?
A lot. So that's like, I joke, it's like my bread and butter. Like that is 100% what I do in all of my freelance marketing work, is working with smaller brands and getting them started with influencer marketing. And I think in working with all those brands, it pretty much stays the same. I think be very scrappy and be creative. And I think just be very willing to pivot and pivot quickly, because in order to understand what's going to work for you, your brand, you can't copy the influencer marketing program of another brand. And I think also just taking a really good hard look at who is buying your products and who is influencing them. And then you reach out to those people. And if those people don't quite work, okay, let's shift it a little bit here, spend some money somewhere else. Maybe we need commission and affiliate codes. Maybe we need to offer a better discount. So I think that there's so many different things that you can layer into a program. So start small and see if that works for you, because if it does, great. But if not, you always have things in your back pocket, like offering better discounts, offering affiliate discount codes, whatever it might be, maybe even paying influencers if you're starting with product gifting, put a small budget behind it. So I think start small and be willing to change things pretty often and understand that it might not spark and work immediately. Because I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls I see, especially with smaller brands starting out, is they just think influencer marketing is going to come in and it's going to save their business. It's going to generate millions of dollars. They're going to sell out right away, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. I wish that'd make my job easier.
Well, I mean, it's so funny. Like, I don't know any other marketing channel where people have that idea. Like, you don't put $1,000 into Google ads or Instagram ads or Facebook ads and go, that's going to be the thing that changes my life. But when it comes to influencer marketing, everyone thinks it will. Like, that one influencer is just going to post and then everything will be different. It's really bizarre how people got that sort of marketing mentality. It's really, really odd.
It's insane. And I think my other favorite thing is, especially now with TikTok being in the influencer world, that they think that we just need to find the influencer that's going to create a viral video. I'm like, okay, go tell the social media team to go make a viral video. See how that goes. Like, it's the same concept.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, you have been absolutely amazing. Thank you for spending some time with us today. The people that listen to the Scrunch Influencer Marketing Podcast are, brands, agencies, influencers, and I know that all of those nuggets of wisdom are going to have helped people in their influencer marketing journey. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. I hope I can help some people out with this.
Absolutely.